Welcome back to the Gospel in 3D. My name is Derek Van Ruler, and I'm here to equip and encourage every Christian to live every day with gospel intentionality. In the last couple of videos, we've been focusing in on the gospel. It's interesting in the Christian life how we can say we believe the gospel and yet have a hard time explaining what the gospel actually is. And so we've spent some time looking at what the gospel is by using two grids. The first grid is creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. And the second grid is God, man, Christ, response. Now, in a couple of videos ago, I talked about the first grid and how the storyline of every movie and the story of our very lives follows the first grid. And to be more precise, we all recognize that there is something broken in our lives. We see that something is off. And this is part of the fall section in our gospel grid. And so we looked at one way of looking at this section by looking at 4 root idols created by Dick Keyes. 4 emotions that drive our sin. So anytime you look behind your sin, it's probably because of one or more of these emotions that are driving your sin. And I stated that there are 4 idols. And they are power, control, comfort, and approval. And your homework was to take time to think about a sin you committed this past week and prayerfully discover which root idol drove that sin. Now, once you've identified that root idol, what do we do about it? That's a great question. Let's think back at the 4 root idols and let's see how ultimately what we are looking for should be found in Jesus Christ alone rather than in our own efforts. Let's dive in. In the idol of power, our desire is that we win. We want to be on top. We want to prove that we are the best. How does that work for us? Not too well, because eventually we meet our match. There is almost always someone better than us, or will eventually be someone better than us. I mean, we all age, right? There are things I could do 10 years ago much better than I can do today. And so none of us will ever have a perfect record on anything we do. So what do? Well, fortunately for us in Jesus Christ, we have the greatest victory and the greatest power over all things. Think about it. What is the greatest enemy we have? It's death, right? It's the greatest equalizer. And yet Jesus conquered death and now reigns victoriously in heaven. You don't have to rest in your power, because you can rest in the power of Jesus Christ. You simply need to remember that for your life. Or how about control? Well, what do you really control? Nothing, right? So let's go back to the cross of Christ. And what we see is in that very moment that Jesus was nailed on the cross, it looked like he had lost all control, and yet he was entirely in control as he used his death to pay the price for our sin and grant to us forgiveness. And we know that because of the resurrection from the dead, which proves that his purpose in dying was accomplished. And he had all control no matter what. And so we can rest in his control, that he is working life out for our good, for our growth, and for his glory. What a glorious promise. Or how about approval? Again, the approval of the world isn't enough because it's fleeting. It's here one day and gone the next. So what do we do about that? We run back to the cross of Christ because in the cross, the Father accepts the sacrifice of Jesus Christ and declares that you and I, through faith in Jesus, are approved. We are declared righteous and are now called sons and daughters of the God of the universe. I don't know about you. There is no greater approval than from the God of the universe. We need to rest in what he says about us, not what we think or what others think. Or how about comfort? How much comfort is enough? Eventually that drink or tub of ice cream isn't enough, and we have to get more and more. And it's never enough. But in the cross of Christ, we are guaranteed a peace that surpasses all understanding because the God of the universe is no longer exhibiting wrath towards us. And in the cross, we are guaranteed an eternity with God where there will be no more pain and suffering, sorrow or agony. And I long for that day. And yet all we have to do is run to Him for comfort, run to Him in prayer, and He will give us greater comfort than all else. So there you have it. Gospel truth applied to your daily life. All we have to do is identify where the fall is active in our lives today, where we are falling away from the Lord, and remind ourselves of the redemption that Christ gives and how we are ultimately looking for is found in Christ alone. The problem is we run to so many other things to look for our redemption, but it is found in Christ alone. Church, my hope for you this week is that you can cling to these truths and remind yourself of how much better Jesus Christ is for your life. He is good. Trust Him. And until next time, God bless.